Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 level podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 18th episode this week, where we'll be breaking down this past Sunday's game versus the Buffalo Bills, discussing news around the NFL, and previewing the upcoming game versus the Jaguars this upcoming Sunday. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pats 300 level pod for up to the minute updates and commentary on news of the day. So just to start, Kevin, this past game versus the Buffalo Bills, obviously a pretty big letdown. What was your overall thoughts and biggest takeaways from the game?
I think the biggest takeaway was it was kind of another repeat of that Colts game when they came out slow. They came out not firing on all cylinders, made a lot of mistakes again this game, a lot of drop passes, penalties where they shouldn't have happened, key stops not happening, and they were just sloppy again. And I think that was kind of my biggest takeaway, where they didn't look like the typical Patriots teams that we've been seeing. It was kind of more of that like Colts game in the 2-4 start to their season. So that was my biggest takeaway, that it was a disaster of a game. And the fact that it was a disaster and it was as close as it was, and they almost they could have ended up winning it if JC Jackson didn't drop that interception. It was also insane to think about that. This should have been a blowout by the Bills. And the fact that they didn't punt at all, and the Patriots were that close into the game, kind of shows their resilience, but it also kind of shows how bad this game was for them.
Yeah, I agree. They just didn't look right all game. The Colts game, they just seemed flat coming out of the bye, and then they seemed to turn it around in about halfway through the third quarter. This game, it just seemed like they were off the entire time, but they still kept it a game up until the end. My biggest takeaway is, once again, we saw the defense when they needed to have a stop, they just weren't able to get it and got to have it moments. And we've seen that a lot this season. When they lost to the Saints earlier this year, they just needed one stop. And if they got the ball back, they could have tied it to go into overtime. Against the Cowboys, they just needed one stop to get the ball back, and they went, or one stop and they win. Colts last week or week and a half ago, they just needed one stop and they got the ball back with the chance to win. This time again, one stop, they get the ball back, chance to win. They just couldn't do it. So it's just a repeating, something that keeps repeating all season. And the first few games of the season, it's early on in the year, the team's just figuring out their identity. But since it just keeps occurring, it's very worrisome, especially as we get later on into the season, potentially to the playoffs. That are we going to see them be able to figure it out once we get to the bigger games in the playoffs, or is it just going to be what we've seen all year?
Yep. I think it's a really big point that I wanted to kind of bring out too, where the first time happened against the Saints, it's like, oh, it happened, but they were so close in this one. Then it happens again. And they're like, oh, like, is this a theme that's starting? The more and more it happens, and we're this late into the season, where there's a great Bill Parcells quote before, as you are what your record is. And basically their record in these situations is not good. And it doesn't seem like their defense can have those stops when they need it. And it's a big trend now. It's not something where it's a blip and it's just one game here. And, they could just have one stop and win it. And it just seems that these big games, they're just not able to do it. And that kind of worries me, that this team isn't as good as it takes to make those wins. So, that's just one thing that we need to keep an eye on. And I think it maybe could be addressed. It's just that it does take some time with all these new pieces. And usually year one this is year one of a rebuild. It's not year 2, year 3. So it's not like the end of the world or anything like that. I think they're still in a really good spot from where we're expecting them to be before. But that's just the thing that has to keep an eye on in that area.
Yeah. And I think my thoughts are, this defense, at least it reminds me a little bit of the 2017 defense. I think it's definitely better, but that defense, it was one of the best in points allowed, but they were one of the worst in yards allowed. This defense isn't as bad in yards allowed, but that defense was more the typical bend, don't break. They'd give up a lot of yards, but they clamper down in the red zone or once they get past the 35. And we've sort of seen that a little bit this year in some big games. But the 2017 season, the dam pretty much broke in the Super Bowl, where they gave up 41 points to the Eagles. Where that's something that worries me a little bit, is this defense has shown promise where they've been good, but in those key situations, they just break instead of where they're supposed to just bend, not break.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's something they can figure out. But so far, I'm not too optimistic that they're going to be able to. I think they have the talent. I think they have the scheming with Bill on defense, but it just depends on until we actually see it. We're just gonna. It's tough to say that they will be able to.
Yep, exactly. And I think another good comparisons at 2019 Boogeyman defense, where they started off really good. And that was against some really bad quarterbacks that they faced. And then the longer the season went on, they ended up kind of getting exposed. There were some injuries, but you also have to think a lot of this team is the same defense from that year, and they're just older now. And the longer the season goes on, are they breaking down, or is it more of a gap in the scheme or a gap in the talent? And the thing about that bend don't break defense that they're playing more right now is it's good, but it also takes a big toll on the defense as well. You're on the field a lot longer, and that builds up over time. So the more and more you're doing over the season, the more it wears down on your defense. So eventually it's going to make it where these sort of games happen. So that's just the other thing about not being able to have that kind of man-to-man defense, making stops quick. If you're on defense for that long, and they were on for a long period of time this last game. And I don't know what the breakdown is entirely, but I think it was probably closer to 40 to 20 or 35.
I think Bills had 10 more minutes time possession.
Yeah,
Let me check.
probably 10, 15 more minutes. So that's a lot to have on your defense, especially an aging core of that defense as well. So, and again, it's not the end of the world. There's a lot of players that are redshirting this year, and a lot of newer players that haven't had as big a role, but I think they will next year. So I don't think it's a big worry for the future, but it's just something to worry about for this season.
Yeah. Time of possession, just quick. It was 35 minutes for the Bills, 24:50 for the Pats. So 10 minutes.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then I think just the thing just struck out the most was, yes, the Patriots got a couple stops in those bend, don't break situations where the Bills got into the red zone 7 times and they only got touchdowns, I believe, 4 of the times. Is that correct? But still, they got into the red zone 7 times on 7 full drives, which is just pathetic. It's just, I think this game kind of gave me some more respect for Josh Allen than I've given him. He looked really good, but part of it was also just the scheme itself. The Patriots weren't getting pressure on him, which is why he was able to have such a big game, allowing receivers to get open. And the Patriots just didn't seem to switch anything up to change anything. I know that I believe in the second quarter, they switched JC Jackson to, I believe, on McKenzie. I'm not 100% certain, but I know they switched Jackson onto someone else. I believe it was McKenzie, and then put Jalen Mills on Stephon Diggs with McCourty covering over the top on Diggs. But they only did that for one drive. Then they switched back to Jackson on Diggs and then Miles Bryant on McKenzie. So I don't know why they didn't switch up, maybe putting Jackson on McKenzie since McKenzie was beating you all game, and then putting someone else on Diggs with help over the top.
Yeah. And then I think one of the things coming out of this game too, where there were a lot of plays where Josh made that I was like, wow, that was a good throw, a good play. There was one he threw across his body on his back foot and threw a laser in the middle of the field to, I don't remember who it was, but I think it was either McKenzie or it was Knox. But there were a few of those plays. There was a few plays that he ran that most quarterbacks can't. There was that 4th and short where he rolled out to the left and it was to kind of break a few of those tackles. Jackson had a bad miss on that. And that could have ended the drive right there. And that was a kind of a big key with the Patriots, where you had a bunch of these situations happen where if you just had one of them happen in the game, they probably would have came up as the winner of this game. If it was only Jason Jackson missing those 2 interceptions, if it was only those penalties happening, Trent Brown, Andrews, the Barmore offsides, if it was only the drops happening on offense, then you would probably be able to get this. But the culmination of all of those 3 things happening, it's just not something that they're built to kind of withstand. And then I think kind of looking at this game too, I was impressed with some of the throws by Josh, but I'm also not still willing to put him in the elite quarterback level from
No,
here.
I
Because if
agree.
you look at this game and you look at, was this a more of a reflection on Josh or was this a reflection on the Patriots? I would say it's more of a reflection on the Patriots losing this game than
Yeah.
Josh beating them. I think there was especially those two interception scenarios, they could have easily, if Jackson ended up catching that last one, we would be talking right now saying, oh, he's good, but he's not good enough. And
Yep.
Josh made the mistake at the end of the game, lost his mind, and threw a bad interception.
Yeah. That would have
Um,
probably been a pick six too by Jackson,
yeah,
that second one.
exactly. So there was a few things they did. There was he missed um, a few players in the red zone
Yep.
kind of badly, and I just don't think. Again, I think he's a very gifted quarterback. He's tall, he's big, he's strong, he's fast, he can run, he can throw, he can make throws that most quarterbacks in the league can't, with the exception of probably Mahomes, maybe Rodgers.
Yep.
But it's just, does he have that extra layer to make him go from a very good quarterback to an elite one? I don't think he does. And I think we even saw that in this game. And if it wasn't for the Patriots being awful,
Yep.
I think they probably would have had this game too. So I'm still not. I came away impressed with it, Josh, but I also I don't think he hasn't shifted my mindset that I don't think he's an elite quarterback. I don't think he has the um what it takes at the end of the game to actually win a game.
No, I agree with that completely. And I don't think I'll fully be sold until I see him do it in a big game in a crunch situation. I believe it was more the Patriots defense just playing horrible and just having a horrible scheme and horrible game
Mm-hmm.
plan. As we've seen throughout the year, Allen has been pretty bad when he's pressured. And I
Yeah.
know technically the Patriots got some pressures on him, but actual like pressures where he's
Mm-hmm.
flustered, they didn't really get much on him. And what we saw the game in the wind, granted it was 50-mile-an-hour winds, but he was 0 for 7 with 2 sacks and I think 3 scrambles when he was pressured. And you
Mm-hmm.
just this game just rushing 3 or 4, not getting much pressure on him.
Yeah.
Judon horrendous, which probably contributed to it a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
I just don't understand the game plan at all. And then especially you see McKenzie beating you,
Mm-hmm.
and they just don't switch anything up, and they just keep letting Miles Bryant get hung out to dry the entire game.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I think that the two things I thought coming out of the half, I thought they were going to switch something up, and I
Yep.
thought they were going to start blitzing more. Where we've seen what happens. We saw in the last Patriots games with him. We saw in the Bucks game. If you get pressure on him, he puts his head down. He misses players in moments that he needs to hit them. And I thought they were going to kind of bring more pressure and kind of hope that they would get him in those situations to have him make a mistake. I think they're too content on trying to hope that if you let him sit back there and you took away the big plays, that he was going to get impatient, which he has shown before in the past, where he doesn't like to take those checkdowns. And that was a big thing with him, where he kept taking the checkdowns, which I was surprised about because
Yep.
it's something he's known for, which he doesn't like to do. He likes to try and make a big play and doesn't always take those 5-10 yard completions. So that was a big step for him, that I think that they were just hoping that, my guess is that they were just hoping eventually he's going to make a mistake. And I don't think that was the way to play it. I think you need to kind of take it more to him, make him make a big play while putting pressure on him. I think Judon was awful in this game again. He's been bad the last 4 weeks.
Yep.
He has to be fighting something, or he's completely burnt out, because this is not the Matthew Judon we've seen before.
Yep.
And then I think what happened with McKenzie, like you said, they did nothing to kind of stop him. And I get the idea going into the game, where that Gabriel Davis is out, that Beasley is out. And so realistically, there's Diggs and there's Knox. So, we put Jason Jackson on Diggs. We can eliminate Diggs. We put one of our safeties on Knox. We eliminate Knox like we did before. And that's pretty much it. And I don't think they really thought of any of these other receivers of being able to beat them. And I think just McKenzie's speed alone is what really hurt. He had the game of his life too.
Yeah.
He's probably never gonna have one like this again. He was their 4th wide receiver. He was a healthy scratch the first Bills game. but they just didn't mix anything up. They're usually known for their adjustments in the game, and they didn't do anything. They should have had linebackers or safeties crack him
Yep.
within the 5 yards, get him off his look, make Josh wait longer, get him kind of confused. And just like you had said, the amount of time that Josh had, he had between 3 to 5 seconds on most dropbacks. And any quarterback that has that much time is going to be able to pick apart a defense, especially a zone defense, where you could sit back and just wait for him to get in between the zones, and that's when he could make the completion. So
Yeah.
that was a big part of that game.
Yeah. I think just I think part of the reason why they didn't have any of the linebackers cracking is I think they were just worried about Josh's ability to scramble if he was getting pressured, and they wanted to have a quarterback or someone spying the quarterback.
Yeah.
But I still think you saw what was killing you. You have to do something to change it up.
Yeah.
And then I think at least just one saving grace from this game is in the NFL, it's very tough to beat a team 3 times, especially a very talented team, which I think this Bills team is talented. So you saw what worked in the first game.
Yeah.
You saw what happened this game and what didn't work. There's a high likelihood you're going to play the Bills in the playoffs. Right now they won it, but depending on how these last 2 weeks shape up, there's a good chance you might play the Bills in the playoffs. So you figured out what didn't work this game, especially. You saw how close it was, even considering what didn't work. I think that they can game plan the next game better, but I will have to say, first, we have to make the playoffs, but
I think another rematch I think would favor the Patriots more heavily, where they were very bad in this game, and if you kind of shore those things up, I think they'd beat them in a rematch. Again, the only big thing is that's alarming with those kind of mistakes that were happening is that it's 2 weeks in a row that we've seen it. So is this a bigger issue, or is this something they need to kind of get out of a funk? Like they were in 2018, where maybe if they beat Jacksonville heavily and then beat up on Miami, they can kind of get rolling like they did that year.
Exactly. And then also, like, some of these mistakes are what we saw earlier on in this year, which killed them in those losses. The Bucs, the Cowboys, the Saints. But as the season went on, they kind of figured it out. I think that the bye kind of hurt them a little bit, but hopefully this Jacksonville game can turn it around, sort of like the Jets game earlier this season did as well. Or like you said, the 2018 season going into the playoffs.
Yeah. Any thoughts on McDermott before I move on to Mac? Or I didn't really see much of him from up in the stands, but what I heard was that he seemed much more calm and wasn't as much of an asshole like he is, but not sure if you have any input on him.
I wanted to bring this up just because we saw the last game how he was just crying on the sidelines, crying in press conference. We've seen this before with him last year, the year before, and this entire game he just seemed very calm on the sidelines. I don't know if I think we were talking about this a little earlier before we joined, was that maybe he saw what he looked like and he was trying to be more composed, or someone says something to him. But he definitely was a lot more composed. He didn't let the pressure get to him like I thought it was going to, which I was just surprised about, and kind of unfortunate for the Patriots, because I feel like if the pressure got him in, if he was going nuts, he would have probably made a stupid decision, but it didn't happen this game.
Yeah. All right. So going forward, we usually break down Mac each week. What did you think of how he played in this game?
He didn't play good, but most of the blame I don't put on him. I think the offense just was out of funk. The offensive line was the worst we've seen in weeks. The wide receivers just weren't getting separation. And it also seemed like the receivers weren't always on the same page, especially on some of those option plays where Harry, especially, it looked like he just didn't know what he was doing. There are times where he was trying to throw the ball to Hunter Henry. And like you said last week, and something we've seen all year, is Hunter Henry he's so slow turning his head around where he doesn't see the ball, where Mac throws it in a pretty good spot, but he just either doesn't see it or he doesn't run the right route. And it's a little concerning how it's happened all season. Hopefully it's something that can get fixed quick, but I'm not too optimistic about that. And the receivers just weren't getting separation. I think the Bills have one of, if not the best secondaries and passing defenses in the NFL. So Mac did have a tough challenge, but I think a lot of it was just, it was just a bad situation for him to be in that kind of led to him having a bad game.
Yeah, I completely agree. Where I think Mac did not have a good game. I think a lot of it was also due to there's a lot of drops he had in this game.
Yep.
Hunter Henry, like you had said, he had, I think, 3 different instances where he just didn't get his head around like he was supposed to. And I think there was another play where he ran the wrong route from what Jones was expecting. And usually in these instances, we've seen enough where it seems like Mac has a good enough grasp of the offense where if he's throwing it completely in a different direction, I'm putting it more on the receiver running the wrong route from versus um Mac making the wrong decision of what he thought the receiver should have made. So it's happened too many times with Henry where it has to be a Henry issue. And it's something they need to kind of shore up because the amount of times that he needs to get his head around, especially in those short passes where you can't be doing everything to try and juke and move some around. You got to know where the ball's coming. And there's just too many times they didn't know that. It also didn't help, like you said, the pressure he was getting. 38% was the pressure rate on this game for him, which is, like we had said, anything over 30 is a high pressure percentage. Anything over 35 is very bad. So it's going to make it more difficult in those situations. Andrews and Karras weren't good in this game. And I think that was a big part. And I think he just wasn't as accurate this game as he usually was. And some of his decision making was a little questionable. I feel like he's starting to get a little fixated on some where he's going to throw beforehand without making the right read. Especially I think we've seen it more often with Myers and Harry, where it seems like he's trying to get Harry involved a little bit too much, which ended up being the interception. And then there's almost an interception that was deep down the field where he was double covered. And I don't know why they were even throwing to him at that point. And then Myers, he just ends up getting killed sometimes for no reason where he could have waited a little bit longer. And I think he's just that pressure gets to him where he wants to get it up a little bit quicker just because he's been getting hit a little bit. So,
I think part of it with Harry is ever since the Falcons game, Harry's been seeing a little more playing time and he's actually running routes and he was wide open on somewhere Mac just didn't look his way. And I wonder if on film session, he saw that after it was a few weeks in a row where Harry was wide open and Mac just didn't look his way. And he's trying to think that I missed him on these. He's probably going to be open and he's forcing it to him where in spots when he shouldn't.
Yeah. That could be the case. So kind of going forward next, three down. Who's your first up?
First up is Damian Harris. I think he was by far the best player on the whole Patriots the entire game. He ran for over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was the only person on offense that pretty much had a good game, in my opinion, especially in the skill position area. And especially not having Stevenson, him being able to be relied on and just having that good game. He's going to be big and needed in the last 2 weeks of the season and come playoff time, where you're going to have to rely on him and Stevenson when Stevenson comes back. But he just had a great game. Number 2 is Kyle Van Noy. He was your best player on defense. He was getting pressure. He was spying the quarterback. And ever since about the week 6, week 7 of the season, he's really turned it around. I know he had a slow start, but he's been one of your best players on defense during that time where he's blocking passes. He's getting in the passing lane, tipping, deflecting passes. He's rushing the quarterback. He's getting pressure, even if he's not getting sacks. And then number 3, I almost didn't go with one, but I almost went with only 2, but I ended up going with Christian Barmore, where he was disruptive in the game. He got, I think, 6 or 7 pressures, which is kind of insane for a rookie interior lineman. I know he did have that huge penalty on the 4th and 7 offside or neutral zone infraction. But other than that, he had a really good game. And it's at least good to see that he's still being productive. So who's your 3 up?
Pretty similar, except for the 3rd. So Kyle Van Noy, like you said, he's been very good the last few weeks. He's been very good, especially against the Bills, containing the edge, not breaking down there, getting good pressure on Allen. I think he was really good in this game. Harris, like you said, was my next one. Again, he ran really hard. I really like the option routes, not the routes, the RPOs that they were doing. It was mostly just run options that they did 2 or 3 times. And I thought that was a nice little wrinkle they added. And there's something that Mac was really good at in the college game. It's not something he runs that much, but usually he does like a run pass option. And I think kind of involving that a little bit more in the gameplay might be nice, might make it a little bit more comfortable. And I think it really got the defense wasn't expecting it at all. It was something that really surprised me. Especially, I think the first one I did was on that 4th and 1 or
down.
4th and short.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what the hell he was doing at first when he was
Yeah.
running out to the right. And I was like, he's not going to get this. So that really was a nice surprise. And I think actually Matt got a decent amount of running yards in this game. So he's not as slow as people make it seem. So
Yeah.
if they involve it a little bit more, I wouldn't be mad. I just don't want him running crazy amount.
Yeah. I think just before you move on to your
Yeah.
third, I just wanted to bring this up because I forget to bring it up earlier. But that run option on that 4th and 1, and then the next run, the toss to the left, which ended up being the touchdown, I thought were two excellent plays by Josh. Play designs by Josh that ended up getting scoring and touchdowns. So I just wanted to bring that up. That even though Josh didn't have a great game plan this week, or I think part of it was just due to offense not getting in sync, but those were two really good plays.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then last one, Shaq Mason. I think he was the best offensive lineman in this game. I think he played really well. So that was not 3 down. I could start. I have Matthew Judon. He was not good in this game again. It's been, I think, 4 weeks in a row. He hasn't played well. And there has to be something going on with him because the difference between the beginning of the year and now is just completely it's insane. And it's not like they're completely taking him out where he's getting double and triple teamed. He ended up getting pancaked by Knox at one point. So you can't go losing a battle to a tight end. So there was just a lot of times where he just doesn't look right. So I'm hoping that maybe him being on the COVID list, maybe he might be able to get a little bit of a breather, but it's probably more likely there's probably something larger going on, like a groin or a hernia or a hamstring or something that's going to take a while and may need some like off-season surgery. So hopefully it's not the case. And hopefully it's just a little, bit of rest he needs, but we'll see. Mac Jones was the next one. I don't think he was the biggest part of the reason why they lost. I think it was the defense, but again, I don't think he had a good game. There was that expected completion percentage stat that I like from, I think it's Football Outsiders does. I think it was a -16 or -19%, which is the highest of the year. Again, I think part of the reason where there was some of those drops and then some of those plays at the end of the game where he was just kind of throwing up to try and make a play. But again, I don't think he looked as sharp as he's looked. And the other thing too is I know he's a rookie, but it's getting towards the end of the year and there's going to be games where he's going to have to try and elevate the team. And I just don't know how much he is going to be able to do that. And he needs to have one of those games where he kind of puts the team on his back and leads them down if everyone isn't playing as well. But next one, I feel bad for saying this, but Bryant, I don't think the reason he was the biggest reason for letting McKenzie go loose. I think it was the way that they used him, but he just didn't do well against him in that matchup. And then just a little bonus one, Kyle Duggar was awful. And I don't think he had a very good game at all.
Yeah. Some similarities. My number one was Matthew Judon. He was just absolutely horrendous. And it looked like every other play, he was just getting pushed down into the ground by the offensive lineman. I know he was rushing more from against the left tackle where he's normally on going up against the right tackle. So I don't know if the left tackle was maybe one of the Bills' better offensive linemen. I can't remember.
Nope, there's backup.
Yeah, that's just horrendous then. I don't know. I have to think it must be an injury, or maybe he's just worn out by how well and how much effort he put in earlier in the season. And that's something we saw actually from Chandler Jones a few years ago. His last season with the Patriots, where he had 12.5 sacks. He had 10 sacks, I believe, in the first 8 games. And he only finished with 2 the last 8 games. And it's actually something similar we're seeing with Judon now, where he had 10 sacks around, I think, the first 9 games, and he's only had, I believe, 3 since then. The last 2 weeks, Colts and Bills, he only had 1 pressure the entire game, which is insane considering there were some games where he was getting 10 pressures. Last 4 games, he's only had 2 quarterback hits or 3 quarterback hits and only 2 sacks the last 4 games. So I don't know if it's a nagging injury. I don't know if it's just him getting worn down or just something else entirely. But hopefully it gets fixed because Patriots are definitely going to need him the rest of the way, and especially into playoffs. The way that this defense is built, you need to get pressure on the quarterback in order to get those takeaways and to stop them, which the first 10, 12 weeks of the season, they were getting it from Judon, Christian Barmore, and then maybe someone else here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But lately it's just been a little Van Noy, a little Barmore, but no Judon. If they want to be successful, they need Judon the rest of the way. Number two, I'm just going to go with the Steve/Bill Belichick for the entire defense. You face the Bills for 7 full possessions, and you allow them to get into the red zone all 7. Not only do you not allow a punt, but it's just getting into the red zone all those times, just not making any adjustments. I don't understand how you let that happen, how you don't switch anything up. I know we talked about it a little bit, but it was kind of maddening wondering how do you let the Bills look this good and not do anything different? I understand if they look good and you switch things up and it's just not working, but they just didn't switch anything up.
Yeah.
And then number 3, I agree. I don't think it's fair, but Miles Bryant, he just got beat by McKenzie. And I think this was a game where if you had Jonathan Jones, I think this might be an entirely different game where Jones is one of the best slot corners in the NFL, and he is one of your fastest players on defense. So I wonder what this game would have looked like if you had Jonathan Jones still healthy, but that was my 3 down.
Yep. That's a big point. So going next, 5 questions, so kind of quick hitters. I think you have your first one, and I have a couple very quick ones that will be kind of a lightning round.
So if you had the option to go with one of these 3 Patriots high draft pick Patriots wide receivers, and you had to pick one, who would you go with? Chad Jackson, Aaron Dobson, or N'Keal Harry? Which one would you take?
Oh God. I'd be between Dobson and Harry. I think Jackson really flamed up really quickly, and I think he was kind of a locker room issue too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Dobson. And I just, for some reason, I feel like he was quicker and was more of that Patriots type of receiver. Then Harry just looks lost, and I don't think he's ever going to fit in here. There's some plays where it happens like every few weeks where he'll have that Colts play where it's like, oh my God, this is why they drafted him. This is why he's here. And then the next week, he's just a bumbling idiot and he makes that drop. He ends up, I don't think that interception was completely his fault and it was tipped beforehand, but I don't know what the fuck he's doing, putting his hand out there when it's already tipped, like trying to
and it looked like he was just like looking around, not even knowing.
Yeah, he was completely clueless. And he wasn't trying to make a stop afterwards. And he had a nice play to get a first down later on in the game, but he's just not the type of receiver that that this offense is built for. There are some times where he's really useful to having those kind of boundary receptions, like a 4th and 10, trying to make like a curl route, boxing someone out. I don't trust him enough. I don't trust him to be in the right spot or make the right play. So I would say Dobson, I would say.
That's fair. I just saw someone bring up Aaron Dobson today, and it made me think of, which one would I really want out of the 3? I think I have to go with Harry still, just because he is really good in the blocking game, and he has that potential. I think out of the 3, he has the most potential. We just have, and we've seen the flashes of it, where the Colts game, that catch, the 30-something yard catch, the Jets game where he pretty much jumped up and caught it over the defender. We've seen those flashes, but he just hasn't put it all together. I think ultimately he probably gets traded or cut this offseason. So I don't think we'll have to stick around another year with Harry. But I think just seeing him make those plays, it's wondering if he can just put it together. He could be maybe not an elite, but a very good receiver. It's just he hasn't been able to do it.
Yeah. Next question. Jimmy G, where's he gonna be playing next year?
I said that I texted you back on October 3rd, and I'm sticking with it. I think he's going to be the Steelers starting quarterback. What about you?
I am changing my mind. I was saying before that he was going to be who did I say he was going to be?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I think I said he was going to be the Packers quarterback. I am changing my mind, and I'm going to put that he's going to be back with the 49ers next year. I think that he is going to eventually lead them to the playoffs and have a semi-deep run. And I think they're going to realize Trey Lance is still not ready yet. If that does not happen, I'm giving a second option, the Saints. I think that would be a really good spot for him if he does not stick with the 49ers. I think having Sean Payton there, I think they're both from that same college,
Eastern Illinois.
Eastern Illinois. So I think having that background, just what he does with quarterbacks, I think that would actually be a really good spot for him, especially being in a dome. I think that would help him out.
Yeah, I feel like if I didn't already make that prediction back in October, I'd say my number one option is him staying with the 49ers, considering how well he's played minus the Titans game. Along with, I still don't think Trey Lance is ready because Garoppolo was horrendous in the Titans game and they still didn't switch to Lance, which I think just shows he's not there yet.
Yeah.
If the 49ers make the playoffs, if they make a semi-decent run, I think it's kind of tough to move on from him, especially if you don't think Lance is ready. But I'm going to stick with my guns of Steelers because that's what I said, and I stick until I'm proven wrong.
All right, next question. Aaron Rodgers, where will he be next year?
I think he's back with the Packers. I know all the drama they had last off season and everything, but I don't see him leaving, considering the seasons he's had, unless we see the same situation occur in the playoffs where you kick the field goal when you should have gone for it, where field goal doesn't make any difference in the game or something like that. I just don't see him leaving the Packers.
Yep. I think the same thing. He's got to go through, won't he retire? Won't he try and force his way out and be the whole Aaron Rodgers show for the whole off season? I think he's going to be back with the Packers. I think he realizes that I think he really likes playing there with the fans and the whole cheesehead thing and that whole atmosphere. I think he likes. And I think, like you said, as long as they don't make a bonehead decision, which they probably will, because I don't think the coach is the greatest.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he'll be back. Next question, Russell Wilson. I think he's probably more likely to be traded. Where do you think he's going to be next year?
That's a really good question. That's a tough one. It's also tough because you don't really know what Wilson wants. There were rumors before that he wanted to go to the Giants, and which doesn't make any sense considering the shape that the Giants are in. I could see the Giants trading for him because this is probably going to be Joe Judge's last shot, so he might go all out to get a proven winner. I don't see him going to the Saints because I don't think the Seahawks would trade him interconference to a good franchise. So I think it's either going to be, if he does leave Seattle, I could see him going to the Giants because the Giants suck and they're not run well. I could see him going to the Jets because the Jets have the draft picks and everything to trade. I could see him going to the Dolphins as well because the Dolphins have a lot of capital. Or I could see him going to Texans. Texans have Davis Mills, who's been playing pretty well. And if the Seahawks believe in Mills, I could see that happening, especially if the Texans end up trading Deshaun Watson to get something else in return.
Yep. I think the reason the Giants thing came out before because Russell Wilson and his wife, Sierra, really want a big market, and New York is a very big market to have their kind of next future on with their post-playing career.
Yep.
I was originally saying the Giants, like it was said before, there was a report, and these things can always come back where it may not end up being true, but they said that they want to stick with Daniel Jones and Joe Judge. I think that's a stupid idea if they want to stick with the quarterback because I don't think he's good at all. So if that is true, I'm going to change it and say the Jets. If it's not true, I'm going to say the Giants. He's going to be playing in New York, one of those two teams. I think that they would rather have Russell Wilson instead of Zach Wilson. And then if the Giants realize that they don't want Daniel Jones, I think the Giants would be kind of the best destination for him of those two teams.
Yeah. I think the only thing with the Jets is I think they might have to see, are they going to be able to be contenders in the next 2 to 3 years with Russell Wilson? If you think he's going to be there for 10 years, then I think you make the decision to trade for him. But if you think he's only going to be 3 to 4 years and then might move on after that, is it worth giving up all that when you're probably not going to be able to compete for the next 2 to 3 years? And then it
What's
also depends on, like I was saying earlier, just depends on what he wants. I know he wants the
mhm,
big market, but if he also wants to win, then maybe a destination like Miami where there's that lifestyle, but also a
mhm.
team that is contending.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Miami's a very good choice, especially because we know that they don't want Tua. And that would actually be a really good spot for him too, because I think Miami's a nice area. I think Sierra would probably like it.
Yeah,
It's a very good spot. It's a lot better than Pittsburgh, which
yeah,
it would be, I think, a really good spot for him to play. Knowing that he's kind of good in those kind of bad elements as well. But no one wants to go to Pittsburgh, and no one
yeah.
wants to go to Chicago, and they already have Fields. So
Fields.
I don't think they're going to be trading him for Wilson like maybe the Jets would
Yeah,
for him. Um, but who knows? Maybe the new coach might not like Fields and may think that he could use him as a chip for something else.
yeah. Also depends on if the Seahawks would be willing to trade him in inter conference to a team
Mm-hmm.
that they think might have be able to put the pieces together.
Yep, exactly. Last question, real quick. Will Josh be back in New England next year?
Yes, I don't think there's a good enough destination. I'll leave this with a caveat because we don't know what coaches are going to be fired. There might be a coach
Mm-hmm.
that makes it to the playoffs that just we don't see getting fired, but ends up getting fired. Let's say Cliff Kingsbury for some reason he's not going to get fired. But let's say
Maybe he
Cliff
takes a
Kingsbury,
college job or something.
yeah, exactly, or something like that where he just makes a boneheaded decision. And there's a very talented roster with a very talented quarterback. I could see him
Mm-hmm.
leaving for that. But other than that, I don't see him leaving New England. At least for coaches we see that are going to get fired, I don't think there's a destination that is a good enough spot for him to leave the position he has now.
I thought the Jaguars possibly would be a good spot for him. But now that we've seen a couple things come out with that. Number one, the keeping the GM there. I think number one, sometimes that may work because I don't think Josh is completely opposed about having a general manager that he hasn't picked, but it's gonna have to be someone that he likes and is able to work with. He's never worked with this GM before in the past, and he hasn't been in the New England organization or close to the kind of scheme that they use. Number two, I think I've heard reports that he's actually very hard to work with. And having this GM being the one to pick the coach, he's not going to want someone that's going to be able to try and kind of usurp him with power. And we know that Josh eventually is going to want some control of the roster. And it doesn't sound like this is something that he wants to happen. It seems like the Jaguars are trying to kind of piecemeal this together in like the cheapest way possible. So I don't think that's something that Josh is going to go into. And then other than that, I don't think there's a coaching job out there he's going to want. The Patriots didn't like Field supposedly coming out. I'm guessing Josh had a pretty big input on who he liked as the quarterback. So if that's the case, he's probably not going to want that spot. One that is interesting would be possibly the Texans, because there has been rumor that they may be one and done with this coach. That he was kind of a placeholder till they got some other spots. I don't know if Josh would be intrigued based on Mills, or because I know some of the Patriots had interest in if they didn't end up picking Jones. So possibly, but they're also in just a bad spot though too, with the lack of talent, lack of picks from before, where it's going to be a little bit long of a route. And Easterby would have to be going. I wouldn't want him on there. So
Yeah.
if Easterby went and Josh was there, maybe because he has Nick there, but I don't think there's any job out there that's enticing enough for him. So
Yeah.
I think he has to wait for the kind of the perfect spot because he can. It's interesting that the Jaguars too didn't have him on the list of candidates that they wanted to interview. So maybe that they already knew this was the case where he didn't want to go there, or maybe too, there are some of those teams where there's kind of that lingering stink from the Colts situation, which is unfair, I think, to kind of be putting over him at this point.
Yeah, I think just talking about the Jaguars, for instance, I know that some people thought it might be a good destination because Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback, and if you believe in him, you at least have a quarterback going forward. But I think it's just more organizational culture where
Mm-hmm.
they have one winning season in the last 14 years, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the year they went 10-6. One in 14 years is insane.
Mm-hmm.
They have a 26% winning percentage the last 11 years. Even with that year, they made it to the AFC Championship game. The GM, who they said they're going to keep, he pretty much ruined the 49ers. He
Mm-hmm.
inherited a 49ers team that went to 3 straight NFC Championship games and pretty much drove them into the ground. So He's also the one that told Urban Meyer it's okay that he stays back in Cincinnati. He was the one. Urban Meyer checked with him, and he's the one that said that. So I don't understand it at all. And then I think the Texans might be a little intriguing if either you can if Deshaun Watson is going to be back and he's okay staying if Josh is the coach, or B, if you really buy into Davis Mills, just because Josh McDaniels has that relationship with Caserio, dating back to the Patriots, but they were both college football teammates too. So they do have that relationship, and he has someone at GM that he can trust. But I just think the Texans aren't in a position where they're going to be able to compete for a few years just based on how depleted the roster was when Caserio took over as GM.
Exactly. And I don't know how many people around that area would want another New England kind of retread where
exactly
everyone was angry that Caserio ended up getting the GM job. I think they'd be even more angry if another Patriots coach would end up taking over as head coach. Because I know that they're not very happy with Easterby or O'Brien, kind of the way that they put them. So I think those are kind of two things that would also not really go over well. But their owner's kind of a moron, so he may not care. But
yeah,
we'll have to see. News around the NFL and AFC real quickly. Chiefs, I think, is the biggest one. They're really rounding into form. I think they're looking like they were last year. They kind of look like the juggernaut that they were. And I think they're definitely the number one team to beat in the AFC right now.
Yeah, I agree completely. I know that they didn't look the same the first 8-9 weeks of the season, but last 4 or 5 weeks they've looked really well. And then their defense is what has really been helping them a lot. Is it's really turned around somehow. Historically, really, the first 8-9 weeks they were one of the worst defenses in NFL history through that part of the season. But they've only been allowing like 10 or 11 points a game since then. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's just the teams they're going up against, but it's a little concerning because I still think that they have holes. I still think that the Patriots match up well with them. If they were to play each other in the playoffs, which they might, depending on it, since the Patriots are probably going to be a wildcard team, they might play them in the second round if they get that far. But they do look like they're the team to be in the AFC.
Yep. Titans beat the 49ers. This was more of a game where Jimmy Garoppolo lost it than the Titans winning it. He had 2 really bad interceptions in this game. And it's just there was something that had sent me before where Jimmy is either one of 2 things. Either he is like I don't know, I'm like I completely botched this quote, but it's basically one of 2 things. Either Jimmy is the reason why you lose, or Jimmy is the reason why you're getting to a Super Bowl, and he's never something in between. And it's something that's kind of frustrating where I know I said I'm done with him, but there's something in me that's still kind of wanting to see him succeed. And something I'm probably never going to get over, where I still want to watch him do well. And I really liked him when he was here. I still think if he was with the Patriots the whole time and stayed and they paid him somehow and kept him on the roster, I think he'd be a much better quarterback than he is right now. I don't think Shanahan's treated him the best way. I think part of the reason where too is I don't think Shanahan really wanted him. And that he was kind of just put on him. And I don't think he really trusts Jimmy as much as Bill would have or Josh would have. And I don't think he developed him as much because I think he was still thinking eventually he was going to get someone different. So I think that was just another thing where I think Jimmy's development has kind of been stunted there, where I think he would have kind of flourished a little bit more here. I don't know if there's anything they could have done with the injury situation here to kind of change him. But maybe they would have toughened him up, done something, got him on some TV12 thing. But who knows? Anything you like to add about that game?
No, just like I think one thing I saw that kind of sums it up well is Jimmy Garoppolo is both overrated and underrated at the same time. And I think that pretty much describes who he is.
Yeah.
I still don't believe in him. I still think he's a wimp. I think he's not willing to play through injuries, even though right now he's saying he might play through the thumb injury, but we'll have to see. I think the Titans, I know they're the number 2 seed in the AFC. I think they're 10-5 right now.
Yeah.
But I think that they're one of the most misleading teams. I think they're very well coached, which is something that's going to help them in the playoffs. But I still don't think that they have the pieces together. They won a lot of close games that if 1 or 2 things just didn't go their way, they could be looking at not making the playoffs this year. So,
Next one, Colts beat Cardinals. I think that was another instance where I think the Cardinals are a fraud team. I don't think Kingsbury is that good of a coach,
Yep,
and I
I
don't
agree.
think Kyler Murray can handle a full season as quarterback. He's too small, I think. Um, but I think the biggest thing is Cliff Kingsbury. I don't think he's that good of a coach. He didn't win with Mahomes in college.
Yep.
And I just don't think I think he's a fraud of a coach. And I think eventually he's going to be going back to college because it's easier than the NFL.
No, I don't know if he'll go back to college because he didn't have much success in college either. But I think that they're not. I've been saying it all year. Even when they were 7-0, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have talent, but I don't think they're one of the top four teams in the NFC,
Mm-hmm.
especially considering the Rams, the Bucks, and Packers. Cowboys, I'll put in because they have talent, but they're so horribly coached
Mm-hmm.
that they'll never make it to the Super Bowl. But I don't think
Yeah.
they're one of the top 3 or 4 talented teams.
Yeah. Next one, Bengals destroy the Ravens. The fact that the Ravens even scored as much as they did with their third quarterback is also insane. I think
Yeah.
Harbaugh has actually done a really good job this year as coach, based on what they've had to do with all their injuries that they've had. I know he's had those 2-point conversions at the end that's kind of lost the game for him.
Yeah.
But I think he's put the team in a pretty good spot based on the lack of talent that they've had. And the fact that they were kind of doing the same thing without Jackson. Well, I think that's also kind of an indictment on Jackson because I don't think he's that good.
Yeah.
That you can have another guy that's probably actually a better thrower than him do the same kind of thing. So, but I Burrow had an insane game
Yeah.
on this and kind of shows why I'd be actually afraid of facing the Bengals in the playoffs. I think the two teams that would scare me the most, and probably three, would be anyone that could spread them out, but also be able to run it too. And I think that's something that we saw even with the Bills a little bit because of Josh's running ability. But I think the Bengals scare me, the Chiefs scare me, and then I think the Bills would scare me a little bit. But just the amount of weapons that the Bengals have is crazy.
Yeah. They have, you could argue they have maybe one of the best receiving cores in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the Ravens, I think part of I know Joe Burrow had a really good game, but part of the
Mm-hmm.
reason is the Ravens secondary is just so depleted where they have a lot of backups there,
Mm-hmm.
which is why he was able to pass for so much. And I think that's the main reason why John Harbaugh went for 2 against the Packers because he didn't trust his defense. I think for Aaron Rodgers for 35 seconds remaining, but also B, if it went into overtime, I don't think he trusted his defense to stop the Packers. So in that situation, I know we talked about it last week, but I completely understand why he went for it. And I think Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in the NFL. And seeing how well they played this year, given all their circumstances, I think is a credit to him, but they probably won't even make the playoffs.
Exactly. I think the next topic I wanted to address definitely because it's definitely influenced our knowledge and care for the game was the passing of John Madden
Yeah.
yesterday. I don't know if you want to kind of talk about him a little bit, and then I can give a little note.
Yeah, no, I think you have to put him in one of the top NFL coaches of all time. I know he had a very short career, but I think it was only less than 10 years. But as a head coach, but he has the
exactly
highest
10 years.
10 years.
I think he started at 32, I think,
and retired at 42.
42, I think. So I think it was 10 years.
Yeah, but he has the highest winning percentage of any head coach with at least 100 start or 100 games coached with a winning percentage of I believe 74%, which is insane. Yeah, he coached some very good Raiders teams. And he is just his knowledge of the game, which he was able to bring into the booth. Once he went into the booth, him being the color commentator, helping teach fans watching the game, helping to teach them the game so that they can learn it from his perspective, as well as being entertaining that people would watch and be able to at least enjoy watching it, even if you're not a big football fan. But I think his biggest contribution is the game of Madden, not only because it's a very good video game, but how much he was able to teach people the game of football through playing the game. Seeing the plays, you're able to see what out of the 4 major sports, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, football is by far the most complex and toughest to learn. By being able to see the plays, trying to choose which ones you want. You're able to actually learn the game of football. You're able to learn different defenses, cover two, man to man zone. You're able to actually see what it looks like. Some different offensive schemes as well, posts, slants, counters. If you haven't actually played football, by actually playing the game, you're getting to learn it just by playing the game. So the impact he's had on so many people learning the game, I think is just, I think out of anyone, he's probably had the biggest impact on the game of football.
Yeah, I think, look, I'd said yesterday when I saw the news, he's probably the most influential people in sports, I think, ever. And I know they could say there's other players in other sports or other components, but no one's had that long of a run, and impacted in just different areas, coaching, broadcasting, and the video game Madden. We're not old enough to have watched Madden actually coach, but we have seen the history from it and how good of a coach he was. He's basically the AFC championship game almost every single year. Had really tough teams. It was a great coach from what everyone has said and what we've seen from him. I think kind of my first memories of watching football too was just listening to him in the broadcast booth and also seeing his commercials too. I think he was extremely knowledgeable of the game, and it's something that's shown for me in kind of the clips I've seen today of just the old clips of him. And it was just something. He's probably one of my favorite broadcasters, probably one of my favorite football ones ever, because thinking back on it, there's not many color commentators out there that do anywhere near as good of a job as him. Even thinking back today, I think right now, if you're even thinking of any, the only possible one I think that could be even close would be maybe Romo, and then maybe it depends, because you love him or you hate him, Chris Collinsworth. But other than them, I don't think there's anyone that even touches Madden, but no one's even close to how good Madden was. The fact that he did it with different broadcast booths, different teams. I think my favorite with him was with why am I blanking on his name? The guy in NBC.
Michaels.
Al Michaels. I think I enjoyed him a little bit more than Summerall, but I think Summerall's a little bit at the end of his career when I started listening. So he was a little bit slower at that point. But I think between that and then also the video game, I know that a lot of people may say, "Oh, how much does he have in a video game?" He's put his name on there, but he helped the development in the beginning of it. He had his imprint of what he wanted this game to look like, what he wanted the game to be. And he wanted to be an educational component as well as something that's entertaining. And he kind of has blueprint on there of what he wanted this game to look like, what he wanted everything on there, and even the commentary on the game that he included there. It was something where it just helped. It helped me get into the game even more as a kid growing up. It helped me understand the game a lot more, a lot quicker than having just watched alone. And I think just like we were kind of talking before this, just you had mentioned football is probably the hardest game to grasp everything. There's different schemes, there's different components. There's offense, defense, there's different blocking schemes, there's different routes, there's different options, there's different everything. There's a whole bunch of different things you have to take into account. What does this mean? This thing can move from one to the other. Are they in cover one? Are they cover two? Are they in zone? Are they in man?
What does that even mean?
What does that even mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of that was something you can learn easily by Madden, and something that really helped, I think, growing up. Not only was it fun to play, but it was also helped you understand what was going on. For what are you watching and why is this happening? And it's not something that you can easily kind of learn on your own rather than just asking questions, or you can actually be learning it while you're doing it and doing it in a fun way. And I think just his impact was immense. And they lost a good guy.
Yeah. And then even just talking about his imprint on that game, at least some of the earlier versions, he used his own old playbooks for the game, so that it's not just like random plays that were just thrown together. It was actual plays that he used as a coach. to help inform the game so that people could learn from it. And the just impact he had on football in general, it's I don't know if there'll be anyone that ever makes as big of an impact as he did. And like you said, just football world has lost a good, just a very influential person. And then just from everything that we've heard, just the world in general has lost a good person.
Yep. And then I don't think anyone will ever get to that part just by how much that he did. And it wasn't only just, there was probably 4 or 5 components of him. One of them, everyone would think would be a good career.
Yeah.
But he did it in probably 4 different ways. He had his coaching career, which he was at the top of. He had his broadcasting career, which I don't think there's a better NFL color color commentator than him. I think he was entertaining. He was knowledgeable. He was interesting. He knew how to keep the fans engaged. Then there's the Madden game where pretty much every single NFL player coming into the game now has played and interacted with, and has helped them learn the game. And then there's also his him being on trying to impact the rules committees with player safety, and helping more minority players get into the league. And then just his historical knowledge, being involved with the NFL 100 committee. Every single kind of component that he's worked in or had worked in was something he just excelled in really, really well, and was a really big part of the game. And I don't think there's anyone that could actually possibly even do what he did. Even looking at Bill's the greatest coach that's ever lived. He doesn't have the time remaining to be the next best broadcaster. It's not something he would even want to do. I don't think. But if it was something he wanted to do, he's 70 years old. So it's highly unlikely he would end up doing that. And it's highly unlikely that there's going to be another game that he could do. I know he wants to kind of have his imprint and legacy in the NFL, and that's why he's doing more of these like documentaries and NFL films and that NFL 100, and trying to get into the rules committee a little bit more. But to do everything that John did, it's just, I don't think we'll ever see it again.
Yeah, I think with Bill, you bring up a good point where I think he can leave a lasting, like he's right as a coach, he's already going to leave a lasting legacy. And I think possibly having his kids continuing that legacy is something else. And I think that when he retires, he will probably write a book of everything of his football knowledge, which can help the knowledge of the game expand, just seeing it from his eyes and his perspective. But I don't think he'll ever be able to have the impact that Madden did, just because Madden also had that broadcasting and the video game as well.
Yep. So moving on to a little bit more happier note. I don't know if you want to take this one, because you've been calling this one for a little while, and it's been a little closer to you than me being out in San Diego.
Yeah, I'll take it over. So something that I've been keeping my eye on pretty much since October is Matt Araiza, the punter from San Diego State University, who was the award winner of the Ray Guy Award, which is given to the best punter. Yesterday, he officially declared for the NFL draft. And something that we predicted earlier on, I think early November, is if he did declare, I think the Patriots are going to draft him, assuming that he's still available when they plan on drafting him. Just to put out some numbers of how historic his season was. His punts average 51.2 punts per punt. NCAA record was 50.9, so he set the NFL record for that. He had 39 punts of at least 50 yards, and NCAA record was 32. He had 18 60-yard punts. NCAA record was 14. He had 6 70-yard punts. NCAA record. He had 2 80-yard punts when there were only 2 in the NFL the entire last decade. And just another note, this was his first year punting. He was the place kicker the 2 previous years. So I think he's also left-footed punter, which we know Bill loves. Jake Bailey has been very inconsistent this year. Either injury, if it's something that can heal, then maybe he'll be returned to his all-pro self next year. But if it's not, I think given how well this Araiza punted, mixed with Bailey's inconsistencies, I think the Patriots are going to draft him and then move on for Bailey. It might take, considering how well he was, it might take a 3rd-round draft pick. I don't know. I think that's something Bill would be comfortable giving up. I know fans might not be, but if you're able to shift field position that much, it can definitely be a big player, as we saw last year with Jake Bailey.
Yep. Yeah. I think the other thing with Bailey too, not only has he played poor this year, but he'll be going to his fourth year next year.
Yep.
And Bill doesn't tend to re-sign punters, and usually will try and have them on the cheap. So kind of moving on from him and then having another rookie contract would be something that he's going to want to have. So
Yep.
maybe make it more likely that he would want Areza instead of Bailey based on salary, talent, and then just kind of poor performance this year. So,
Yep. And then just one interesting note that he actually is a pretty good kicker as well. For kicks inside of 50, the last 2 years, he's 24 of 30. And he's also made some 50-yarders this year. I wonder if, considering he is pretty talented at that, if the Patriots draft him, if I'm assuming Nick Folk's going to be back next year, but we don't know, as Nick Folk's, I think 37, 38, how much longer he's going to stay in New England. But I wonder if that's something that Bill will have him continue kicking on the side in practice. Him obviously be the punter, but that's something he work on. Or if he's able to get more accurate as a kicker, you keep him to be both your kicker and your punter, and that opens up another roster spot for someone else.
Yeah.
I know that Bill earlier this year actually talked about that, where if you have someone that's talented enough to do that, that's just invaluable because that opens up a new roster spot. And I think Arezia has the talent that can do it. I just wonder if he can get his accuracy better. It's been pretty good, but if it can get better where he's hitting 90+% from inside of 50, that might be something that Bill would be comfortable doing.
Yeah, I think the accuracy is a big thing where they value accuracy here, especially you look at Folk. He's not the biggest leg, but he's very accurate right now. Yeah. And I think another thing too about having a razor here where if Folk, if his range starts getting diminished a little bit by age, you could still keep him on board and have a razor kick those long field goals and then still punt while keeping Folk around for that too. So I think that's just another thing to think about as well. And it's another plus for him. And then Razor would be able to do kickoffs just like Bailey is. And it's not something that we would have to worry about having full kickoff or anything like that.
Yep. And Arezia has been doing kickoffs for the San Diego State, granted, also field goals and punting, but just something to keep in mind.
Kind of looking quickly to the Jaguars. I don't think there's really much we need to kind of discuss based on their how they look, and I think they have 19 players in the COVID list right now.
Yeah.
But they should probably get most of them back by Sunday based on the new COVID protocols with the 19 days, not 19 days, the 5 days, but could be a little hairy on them.
They added a few more to the COVID list today, and I'm assuming they'll still add some more tomorrow, but that's just the uncertainty with COVID.
But really, I know their defense has actually played decently well. It's their offense has struggled a lot. I think Trevor Lawrence is actually another question I probably should have asked before. With he's supposed to be one of these generational quarterbacks, like a Peyton Manning, like a Andrew Luck. What do you think? This is more just a question because I know he hasn't played well this year. He hasn't been surrounded by much talent. He's been surrounded by a bad coach. He's been in an awful organization. What do you think is going to happen with his career?
That's a great question. I think he has all the talent in the world, but I know he's having a bad rookie year, and a lot of rookies have bad years. Peyton Manning, for instance, you could argue is one of the top 3 to 5 quarterbacks of all time, but he had one of the worst years as a rookie. He set the record of interceptions with like 27. So you can't always judge based on how you perform as a rookie, but just seeing how the game has evolved where rookies are performing better than they have in the past. Deshaun Watson with not a really good an okay Texans team had a really good rookie year. Last year, Joe Burrow was going on historic rates for a rookie without really an offensive line and really only having one or two wide receivers here and there was really good. I know that in Jacksonville, he might not have the same receivers that Burrow had, but he still has a pretty decent, he has some decent receivers here and there. Whereas with his talent, he should be able to perform better. Justin Herbert had an excellent rookie year last year. Granted, he had 2 really good receivers in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry at tight end and Austin Eckler in the backfield, which I think contributed to Herbert having a good year. But still, seeing how he's performed compared to some of the rookies coming out the last few years is, I don't know. I wonder if it's part of it is Mental, if it's just moving from college to the NFL,
Mhm.
just taking it might take a couple of years, but I really don't know what to think. I think he'll ultimately once he it, I'll put if I can't say once he considering the Jaguars culture and everything, but if
Mhm.
he gets a good surrounding cast, I think he has potential to be a Pro Bowl or All Pro. I just don't know if he'll ever end up getting there.
I think if he doesn't demand his way out of the Jaguars organization, I think he's going to be a very big letdown for them based on everything that they surround him with. With I don't think they're going to have the right coach picked based on what they're doing right now with their coaching search. If they're not looking to kind of reset kind of overall, I think it's going to be a kind of a bad situation that he's going to be put in, and I think it's going to fail, and I think he's going to have another coach in a few years. And we've just seen this where if you don't have that steady rock of that foundation and everything gets changed over and over and over again, you're not going to succeed. You're going to be put in a bad position. And I think if he doesn't get himself out of there, I think he's going to continue going down a bad path like the Jaguars have already.
Yep. I agree.
Um, so looking at this game, Patriots are favored by four.
Just one thing, just want to bring up was
Yep.
I think this is going to be a game where if the Patriots want to have success in the playoffs, they have to figure out what has gone wrong the past few weeks and correct it,
Mm-hmm.
especially on the offensive side. I mean, defense too, but the offense especially. And I think this is a game where they can. I know the defense hasn't been horrendous for the Jaguars, but it hasn't really been great either. They've been
Mm-hmm.
allowing a completion percentage of almost 70%, 69.8%. And I know Mac Jones has had completion percentage wise had two of his worst the last 2 weeks. I think this is a game where he can correct that, get around 75% plus completion percentage. They've allowed a rating, or their rating they've allowed on the year is over 100. So I think this is a game where the offense can figure things out. Jaguars only have 6 interceptions on the year, which is the second least. So I know Jones has had some turnover worthy plays the last few weeks, but hopefully that's something that he can see what's coming at him, not make the flustered mistake, and then build on that for the last week of the season versus Miami, and go from there. Rushing wise, also, I think Jaguars are in the top or bottom 10 for rushing yards allowed per game. So I think this is just going to be a good game for the offense and to figure things out. And then defense, especially going up. I know Lawrence has made some good throws even last week against the Jets, but he hasn't been great either. So I think this is a game where the defense can kind of step up and fix things as well.
Yeah, I think like we had said, this has to be kind of one of those kind of catapult games for them to kind of get themselves right. I think it's a good spot where they're coming in where they can kind of beat up on a bad team and hopefully go in the right direction going forward. Patriots favored by 14.5 over on 41. I think they're going to get the over themselves. I think it's going to
Yeah.
be 42-13, a pretty big blowout. I think kind of that one of those get right games for them.
Yeah. Also, the Jaguars are going to be without James Robinson, who I think is one of the better young
Mm,
running backs in the NFL. I know Urban Meyer hasn't used him, or when he was the coach, didn't use him correctly, which I didn't
yeah.
understand why. But I think that's just going to be a huge loss for them this upcoming week. It's going to make the Jaguars one dimensional and throw it. And I think that the Patriots are going to have success.
Mm-hmm.
I think they win 38-10. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even more than that. So I go with the Patriots to win the game easily. Go with them to beat the spread, which is 14.5. And I have them hitting the over.
Yep. I think we're pretty big locks up there. One last note for anyone listening: there was another death recently in the NFL. There was Jeff Dickerson. He was a NFL reporter for ESPN. Died at age 44. There's a GoFundMe page that Adam Schefter has been kind of sharing out there. So I'd just give it a look and see. He left behind his 11-year-old child Parker. And Parker's also without his mother who had died last year. So just something to kind of look into if you have the means. I'd probably go and donate a little bit for that. But on that note, a little happier note, we're looking forward to hopefully a beatdown this Sunday with the Jaguars. Listen for us next week. And make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. And give that YouTube show watch and listen, subscribe there too. And follow us at Pat's 300 Level Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you very much, and talk to you guys next week.